you for allowing some time to join today's webinar. Uh, I was saying previously, my name is Orlando Salazar, and I'm going to be your moderator for today. I think we allow sufficient time to see if anybody else was going to join, so we're going to go ahead and get started. Today's webinar is going to focus on the features and capabilities of Vembu BDR, along with a live demonstration of the product. We're also gonna talk a little bit about a company overview, some product information, some deployment strategies. Then we're gonna go straight into the live demonstration, talk a little bit about the licensing and pricing, and then at the very end we're gonna have a Q&A. But before we get started, let me set some ground rules. I would like to mention that this webinar is being recorded, so if you like a copy at the end, you can request it and we can send it out to you. If at any point during the webinar you have any questions, please feel free to ask them on the chat window, and one of our technical guys will get to it. Also, if you would like to actually verbally speak your question, you have the ability to raise your hand and ask the question. At the very end, we will have a Q&A session where you'll also be able to ask any additional questions that you may have. Okay, so let's get started. About Vembu Technologies. Vembu Technologies was founded in 2004. It's a private company and it's been profitable since 2006. It's been growing year after year, so it's been doing pretty well. It's currently headquartered here in Dallas, Texas. It services about 4,400 partners worldwide, and they in turn service about 60,000 businesses. Most of our partners or consumers are located in North America. We got some in Europe and very few in Asia Pacific. Vembu's target audience are value-added resellers, enterprises, small and medium-sized businesses like Terramark, Buchanan, QSource, etc. Going a little bit more in depth about the company. Since 2004, Vembu Technologies has had a strong heritage in the storage and backup industry. They have offered many solutions for backing up. Right now, their two main solutions are Vembu BDR and Vembu Online Backup. The main way that you can differentiate these two solutions is Vembu BDR is a on-premise backup solution with an optional cloud DR. Vembu Online Backup takes away the on-premise and directly backs up to the cloud, so it's just a cloud DR. Both of these solutions offer a universal backup solution for all physical and virtual environments. And what this means is that with one product, you don't have to worry about having multiple products to back up your endpoints or to back up your physical system or to back up your virtual environment. You basically have one product that will do all those types of backups. Okay, now let's talk a little bit more about Vembu BDR. In its current version, it's BDR 3.0. With Vembu BDR, there's a unique value proposition just because it's so simple to use. Like I mentioned before, it works across multiple environments, whether they be physical or virtual. And it works also across multiple operating systems, like Windows, Linux, or Mac. Besides actually protecting those operating systems, Vembu BDR protects the applications running within those systems, like Exchange, MySQL, SharePoint, etc. Our backups are application-consistent backups. And what this means is that we tell the system that you're backing up, hey, if you're running an application, we're going to take a backup, so please stop whatever you're doing so we can take a backup of that application without corrupting any data. At the end, if you're running like Exchange, we'll do automatic loss truncation also to prevent data corruption. Why we do all this is just so you can have the ability to do granular recovery of those applications, whether they be mailbox recovery or table level recovery, etc. So besides the actual backups, we focus on disaster recovery. We focus on the different types of recovery like bare metal recovery, instant VM recovery, VM power replication. And we do all this from a single pane of glass. And with this single pane of glass, you'll have the ability to see all your backups, to do the different types of restores within each backup, In this single pane of glass with the new version, it has an enhanced user interface. It looks very clean. It looks very professional. And it also gives you the ability to set up email notifications. With those email notifications, you can set up to see if a backup has failed, if a backup has been successful, if there's been any type of network error, etc. Vembu BDR also offers the optional Cloud DR, which is hosted on Amazon. It has several compliances like HIPAA, high-tech, and the advantage of the optional Cloud DR is that in case of high-level disaster, you'll have the ability to spin VMs on the cloud. So if if your building burned down, you can actually spin any VMs that you have backed up to the cloud on the cloud. Let's talk a little bit about some deployment architectures. Uh, Vembu BDR is an on-premise solution, like I mentioned before. It is a client-server architecture. So you would install the client on a different operating systems and different environments. Uh, from the client, you will pick, let's say, a virtual environment. You will pick the VM that you want to back up. And if there's any applications, it's going to be application aware. It's going to go through compression, encryption, deduplication. Um, in terms of compression and deduplication, you'll see a good size of data reduction. So if you have about 100 gigs of data, you're probably going to convert it into like 20, 30 gigs. On the backup server is really where all the magic happens and where we really stand apart from other vendors out there. Our backup servers have our own patented pending file system called Vembu Hive. And with Vembu Hive, it gives you the ability to do some very unique restore features. So the first one we have is Instant Boot. With Instant Boot, let's say you're backing up some VMs from VMware, and your backup server is a Windows-based backup server running HyperV. You can actually instantly boot a VM from VMware on that Hyper-V without actually having to restore that VM. So that VM is still compressed, encrypted, and deduplicated, but you're able to access it and get any information, make any changes, and then those changes will be saved. When it comes time to restore, you can actually restore the VM back to the original environment and have any of the changes that you have made. You also have the ability to do instant mount, which gives you the ability to mount that VM as a drive on the backup server to do granular recovery of folders and files. Uh, Besides that, you do have the application level granular recovery. So in case of Exchange, mailbox recovery, in case of any database, table level recovery, etc. Um, from the on-premise, we go to the Vembu Cloud. If you do decide to enable the optional Cloud DR, any backup data that you have saved to your backup server, you can enable it to be transferred to the Vembu Cloud. And then in case of high-level disaster, you also have the ability to restore from the Vembu Cloud. With that said, I'm going to pass it over to Thiago. He's going to be giving you the live demonstration of the features of the product. He's going to talk to you a little bit about the client side, the backup server side, the different restore options, and then we'll talk about pricing and licensing.
All right, thank you, Orlando. And yeah, so as Orlando already gave you a brief introduction about Vembu BDR, so Vembu BDR is going to be like a client-server architecture. So basically, you would be installing the client software on the servers that you would like to back up, and you would have another server, which is called backup server, where you would be installing the server management console. And once the console is deployed, you could have your storage connected, like you could use your external storage, or you could use your storages like SAN or a NAS or a direct attached storage, and you could go ahead and have that as a destination for your backups. And talking about the client side, once you install the software and once the installation is done, you could access the client console from any browser which is available on that particular machine. So basically, if you click on once you have the client console logged in, the first thing that you would be doing is like you would be scheduling the backup. So basically you would have all the scheduling functions and other things which needs to be done for this particular server would be done from the client console. Talking about the backups, we currently have three different types of backup strategies. The first one is backup for virtualization, where we support backups for VMware and Hyper-V. The next one is disk image backup, which is purely designed for backing up your physical server. And the last one is a legacy backup method, where you would be specifying which file and folder that you would like to backup. So we'll talk about each and everything in detail. So the first option is going to be VMware backup. So currently VMware backups can be performed under two different things. The first one is you could perform an agentless backup if you don't have a SAN enabled environment, or if you have a SAN enabled environment, you could go ahead and deploy the client or the BDR client console on any one of the guest VMs. And once that is done, you could actually go ahead and use the SAN transport mode or hot air transport mode to go ahead and have your VMware backups running. So by having those two backup methods, you could have VMware backups running at much faster rate. And once you have the agent installed on any one of the ESXi hosts, then in order to go ahead and schedule the backups for that ESXi server, you could go ahead and open up the BDR client. So basically, if you have this BDR client installed on your workstation, you could just go to backup, go to virtualization backup, click on VMware backup, and under that you have an option which says add VMware server. So when you go to this particular, or when you go to this specific option, you have an option to go ahead and add your ESXi server. So basically you could go ahead and type in the IP address of your ESXi host with username and password, so that you would have that ESXi host added under this particular client. So thereby you could go ahead and have manage, or you could actually go ahead and manage your backups for that ESXi host from this particular client. In order to go ahead and schedule the backups, once the ESXi host is added, all you could do is like just go to the drop-down list and select the ESXi host which you would like to backup. Then when you click on add VM backup, it would automatically show up the guest VMs which is running on that particular ESXi host. So you could basically go ahead and select the VMs that you would like to backup, and then you could just go ahead and schedule the backups. The scheduling is pretty simple and straightforward. Either you could run it every few hours or run daily based on your requirement. And once the scheduling is completed, you could configure the retention policies. By default, if you perform an hourly backup, you could have up to 3 restore points for that particular day, and you could also increase this to maximum of 12 restore points. If you perform a daily backup, you could have up to 3 restore points, or you could actually increase it up to 90 restore points to the maximum. And our backup strategy works in such a way that the first backup which is configured for any client would only be a full backup, and additional to that, all of the backups, or apart from that, all of the corresponding backups which is going to run is all going to be incrementals. So you would have daily incrementals running. And additional to that, you also have an option to go ahead and perform additional full backups. So basically, irrespective of your incrementals, you could go ahead and click on this additional full backup option, and you could go ahead and schedule backups. You could go ahead and schedule additional full backups. So basically, you could enable this option, and you could go ahead and type, you could just go ahead and specify whether you would like to run a full backup every week or month based on your requirement. And then additional to that, we also have another feature which is called application aware options. So basically, if your guest VMs are running any clients like, if your guest VMs are running any applications like Exchange or SQL or SharePoint, you could just go ahead and enable truncate logs on successful backup, and you would be able to go ahead and perform log truncation for the databases. And once that is done, you could just go ahead and name the backup, and you would have the backup scheduled to run. And next comes VMware. Next comes the Hyper-V backup. So in case if you have a Hyper-V enabled environment, the first thing you would do is like you would be downloading this BDR client, and you would be installing the BDR client on the Hyper-V host. And once the installation is done, you could just go to Hyper-V backup option, and it would automatically show up the guest VMs which is available on that particular Hyper-V host. So thereby you could go ahead and select the VMs that you would like to backup, and you could go ahead and schedule it. So you could either run it every few hours or run daily based on a requirement, and then you could go ahead and configure the retention policy, and you could go ahead and name the backup, and you would have the backup scheduled to run. And for VMware and Hyper-V, we use CVT drivers to go ahead and perform block level backups. And the next backup method is going to be disk image backup. As the name says, we're going to go ahead and perform disk image backup, which is purely designed for backing up your physical server. So basically, if you have a physical server, you could just go ahead and perform a image backup, and by performing an image backup, it actually uses Microsoft VSS, and we go ahead and take a snapshot of that, and we go ahead and then save that snapshot as image backup on our backup server. So in order to go ahead and schedule your disk image backup, the first thing you would be doing is like you would be deploying the BDR client onto that physical server, and once that is done, you could actually go ahead and perform the driver installation. So in order for your partitions to be listed, you could just go ahead and perform driver installation. And once the driver installation is done, you could actually go ahead and see the partitions which is available on that particular disk. So basically, you would be selecting the partitions which you would like to back up, and you would also be including the boot partition. And once that is done, you would be scheduling the backup. You could either run it every few hours or run daily based on your requirement. And then you would be configuring the retention policies, where you could either run it, where you could go ahead and have the retention policies configured. And additional to that, we also have another feature which is called application aware option. So basically, if that physical server is running any applications like Exchange or SQL or SharePoint, you could go ahead and click on this application aware option, and you would be able to go ahead and perform application-specific snapshots for that particular application. So basically, if you enable this application aware process, we go ahead and use Microsoft VSS API, and we go ahead and create a consistent database snapshot by querying the application. And then we also go ahead and help you in performing truncation of transaction logs, so that you could go ahead and perform a point-in-time restore for your SQL database. And in case of Exchange, you could go ahead and perform granular restore of individual mailboxes or individual emails. And in case of SharePoint, you could go ahead and completely recover a particular site if that is down on your network. And then once the configurations are saved, you could actually go ahead and review the backup, and you could have the backup named, and you would have the backup scheduled to run. And additional to that, the last backup strategy is going to be file backup. So as the name says, file backup is a legacy backup method where you would just go ahead and specify which file and folder that you would like to backup. So basically, you could go ahead and select the folders that you would like to backup, and you could go ahead and schedule it how frequently you would like to have the backup to run. So you could either do it from every few hours to run daily, weekly, or continuous based on your requirement. And then comes the retention policies. For file backup, by default, we retain the last 5 versions to be available on our backup server. You could also go ahead and increase the number of versions that you would like to retain. And in case you could just click on edit, and you could go either with version-based retention or time-based retention. If you go with version-based retention, you could actually go ahead and retain up to 99 versions. And if you go with time-based retention, irrespective of the versions, you could go ahead and have uh, the backups available for last 10 years. And you could just have the backup scheduled, and you would have the backups running as per the schedule. And apart from these backup types, we also have another feature which is called VMware Applications. So if you have a complete VMware environment, you could go ahead and perform a live replication of your guest VMs from one ESXi host to another ESXi host, so that you could go ahead and have that as a DR thing. In case if your main ESXi is down, you could actually go ahead and power up your guest VMs from the replicated site. In order for the scheduling, in order for how to schedule the replication, the first thing you would be doing is like you would be selecting the ESXi host which you would like to replicate, and when you click on add VM replication, it would auto-populate the guest VMs running on that particular ESXi host. So basically, you would just go ahead and select the VMs that you would like to replicate, and once the VMs are selected, then you would be scheduling it, how frequently you would like to have the backups, how frequently you would like to have the replications to be done. You could do it from every 30 minutes to run daily based on your requirement. And then comes the target ESXi host. So you would just go ahead and add the DR VM server. So you would just go ahead and add your target ESXi host. host. And then once that is added, you could just go ahead and select it from the drop-down list, specify the data center name, the data store name, and if you'd like to go ahead and give a name, you could just go ahead and give a VM replica suffix name for those guest VMs, and you could specify the retention count, and you could go ahead and save this configuration. So irrespective of your daily backups, you would have these live replications of your VMs happening so that you could have these VMs available for DR purpose. And so this is pretty much a high-level configuration of the backups that can be deployed from the client side. And once these backups are scheduled, this is all going to be a one-time configuration. Once the backup is scheduled and once the backup is getting streamed to the backup server, on the go you would have the encryption, you would be having compression, and you would also go ahead and have a fixed line deduplication that happens. So by having compression and fixed line deduplication, you could actually go ahead and save a quite amount of storage space. So the data gets compressed, and you would actually go ahead and see a 50% of more compression happening for the backups that is running. And so now we'll go ahead and talk a little bit more about the recovery options which is available with our product. All right, so now this is the server management console. So even this is going to be a web-based application. So once you go ahead and install the software, and in order for you to go ahead and install the server management console, the supported server-based operating system should either be Windows Server 2012 R2 or Windows Server 2008 R2. And if it's a Linux-based server operating system, you could deploy it on Ubuntu 12.4 LTS 64-bit or Ubuntu 14.4 LTS 64-bit. So basically, these are the 4 server-based operating systems where you would be installing the server management console, and you would be making that as a backup server. And once you have access, like once the backup server is deployed, you could access the server management console from the browser that is available on that particular mission. So once you log into the management console, you could just go to management and you could click on storage management. So the screen which you see right now is the storage management window, where you have options to go ahead and add your storages like SAN or a NAS or a direct attached storage, and you could go ahead and use that as a destination for your backups. And then comes the list of clients. So list of clients is actually the clients which is being backing up to the backup server. So it would automatically show up the clients. So these are the different clients which is being backing up to the backup server. And when you expand a specific client where it says view backup, you could actually go ahead and see the backups which is being scheduled for each and every client. So I've expanded one of the client, and you could actually see 3 different backup jobs available. So now we'll talk about the recovery options which is available for each and everything. So basically, if you perform a disk image backup, you could actually go ahead and perform multiple recovery options. You have multiple recovery options available. So first thing we're going to talk about is instant boot. So to start up, I'll give you an example. So you have a physical server which is running Exchange or SQL, and you've been backing up that server, and you had a disaster, and you have that physical server completely down on your environment. As this is an Exchange server, you would like to have that server up and running instantly. You could just go ahead and perform instant boot. So basically, if you click on instant boot, you would actually go ahead and mount the image backup of that physical server which is crashed. So in order to do that, you would be selecting the timestamp which you would like to boot, and then you would be selecting the hard disk which you would like to be mounted, and then you would go ahead and select the hypervisor. So by default, if you install the backup server software on Windows Server 2012 R2 or 2008 R2, it comes with HyperV. So we're going to go ahead and use that HyperV, and then I'm just going to go ahead and specify the RAM which is required for that image backup to be loaded and up and running. And when you click on instant boot now, it would actually go ahead and mount this image backup on the Hyper-V, which is available on the backup server. So now I'm just going to go ahead and open up the Hyper-V server, and you could actually see the disk image backup which is being mounted. All you could do is just click on connect, and you would be able to go ahead and connect to that particular machine. And once this is up and running, you could just go ahead and specify an IP address, and you could directly go ahead and use it for your production. And once you start using it for your production, whatever changes that you do to this particular image backup which is loaded would also be taken as a regular timestamp, so that in case if you're planning to go ahead and rebuild the physical server which is crashed, we also go ahead and help you in performing a bare metal restore. And in order to do that, you could actually go to our website. If you go to vembu.com/try page, you could actually go ahead and download the recovery CD which is available. So basically, if you click on this try page, you could actually go ahead and download the recovery disc CD which is available for 32-bit and 64-bit. So once you download this recovery CD, you could go ahead and use this recovery CD to create a bootable ISO disk. And once you have that bootable ISO disk available, you could actually go ahead and boot the physical server which is crashed using this disk. And once that is booted, you could actually go ahead and perform driver injection, and thereby you would be able to go ahead and communicate with the backup server, and you could go ahead and select the image backup state which you would like to recover. So once you have that selected, that particular physical server would be restored to that particular image backup state. And additional to that, we also have another recovery option. So basically, just by having a single disk image backup, you could actually go ahead and perform granular restore of individual files and folders. So when you go ahead and expand the recovery options for the particular client, you have an option where it says VHD. So basically, if you click on this VHD option, it would automatically mount this image backup under Disk Management Console, so that this particular disk image backup would be listed as a drive on your File Explorer window. So I'm just clicked on VHD. I'm just selecting the timestamp, which image timestamp that I would like to be mounted, and then I would be selecting the disk. And then when you click on this and when you click on attach now, it would actually go ahead and mount this particular drive as a it would actually mount this image backup as a drive on your File Explorer window. So when you go ahead and expand this File Explorer window, you could actually go ahead and, I'm sorry, give me a second. So once you go to this, you could actually go ahead and make this disk online, and you would be able to go ahead and have access to that particular disk. So once you have access to it, you could actually go ahead and browse the files and folders, and you could go ahead and recover individual files and folders. So once you have the files and folders, you could go ahead and restore which specific file and folder that you would like to restore. And thereby, once this is done, you could actually go ahead and perform granular restore of files and folders. So in case if you have application-specific backups being backed up as an image backup, so basically you have a backup of an Exchange server or a SQL server or a SharePoint server, you could actually go ahead and do the same. This mounted as a drive, you could actually go ahead and browse to that, and you would be able to go ahead and specify that particular thing. So once that is done, you could actually go ahead and what to say. Once that is mounted as a physical drive on your My Computer window, then you could just go ahead and use our recovery tools. So basically, if you go back to vembu.com/try page once again, you could actually see recovery tools available, which is Explorer for SQL, Explorer for Exchange, and Explorer for SharePoint. So you could go ahead and use these recovery tools to go ahead and perform granular restore of applications. So you could go ahead and use Explorer for SQL to perform a point-in-time restore for your SQL database, and you could go ahead and use Explorer for Exchange to perform granular restore of mailboxes and individual emails, where you could go ahead and restore it to an Exchange server, or you could even download that as a PST. And apart from that, if you have Explorer for a SharePoint, you could go ahead and completely restore a particular site which is running on your SharePoint environment. Apart from that, we also have another recovery option where you could go ahead and perform a P2V conversion. So just by having a disk image backup of a physical server, you could actually convert that image backup to a virtual server. So when you expand the recovery options, you have an option which says restore. So basically, if you click on restore, you could actually go ahead and restore, or you could actually go ahead and download this image backup of that physical server to a different file format of your choice. So in order to do that, the first thing is like you would be selecting the timestamp, then you would be selecting the disk which you would like to convert, and once that is selected, you would go ahead and select the image file format. So you could either convert it to a VHT or a VMDK or a VHTX based on your requirement. Once that is specified and once you specify the restore location, that particular image backup would be converted to a VHTX and it would be available on that particular restore location. So thereby, once you have that available, you could actually go ahead and use the appropriate hypervisors to have that server up and running as a VM on your environment. And additional to that, if you have a VMware backup available, you could also go ahead and perform the same recovery option. So basically, you could go ahead and mount a VMDK file, or you could actually mount a VM backup instantly on hypervisor, and you could have that VM running as a you could actually go ahead and have that server running as a VM on your hypervisor, which is available on the backup server. And additional to that, you have an option to go ahead and restore the VMs to an ESXi server. So basically, if you go to VM backup, you could click on this option where it says um, restore to an ESXi server, and thereby you could go ahead and restore that image backup, or sorry, the VMDK backup of a particular VM to a different ESXi server or to a vCenter which is available on your environment. So basically, the first thing you would be doing is like you would be selecting the timestamp, and once the timestamp is selected, you would go ahead and select the VMDK file. So once you have the VMDK file selected, you could just go ahead and specify the target ESXi host details. So basically, you would like to restore it to an ESXi server, or you would like to go ahead and restore it to a vCenter of your choice. So these are some of the recovery options which is available with our product, and additional to that, we also have another option which is called Cloud DR Management. So basically, you could use this particular feature in order to go ahead and perform an offsite backup of the data which is available on the backup server to our own cloud, which is running on Amazon AWS S3. So that's an optional one. If you would like to go ahead and enable this offsite backup, you could just go ahead and enable this Cloud DR Management, and thereby once you have that enabled, you could just specify the region where you would like to have the offsite backup to be stored. And once that is done, you could go ahead and select the window, how or when you would like to have the offsite backup to run. And then you could just go ahead and save these options so that you would have the data getting backed up from the backup server to our own cloud, which is running on Amazon AWS S3. So once you have the data available in our cloud instance, if there is a disaster and if you have a complete network completely down, you could also go ahead and request for an instant spin up feature where we could go ahead and spin up a particular image backup which is available in our cloud instance as a VM, and you would be provided with a dedicated VPN access so that you could go ahead and access that VM and you could go ahead and start using it for your production. And so additional to that, we also have several reporting functions available. So under reports, the first thing we're going to talk about is backup status report. So when you click on backup status report, it would actually show up all the backups which is running to the backup server. So it gives you an overall report of each and every backup which is running. So basically, um, it shows up like whether the backup is a successful backup or a missed backup or a failed backup, or you have an option to go ahead and have this backup scheduled as an email report. So basically, you could enable this reporting function, and you could go ahead and specify the email address to whom you would like to have this sent as a report, and then you could just go ahead and add filters. I would like to be notified only for missed jobs or failed jobs. So once you have that specified, you could actually be receiving emails of these reports to you so that you could go ahead and check the status of the backup report without you logging into the backup server. And additional to that, we also have another reporting function which is called backup verification report. So this is an automated process which happens on the background. Once if you have an image backup completed for any server or physical server or a VM or a Hyper-V, our backup server or our backup software would automatically go ahead and take that image backup. It automatically mounts that image backup on the Hyper-V which is available on the backup server, and it checks whether the backup is a successful backup and it's a bootable image backup. Once you have that image backup completely booted, it would automatically go ahead and take a screenshot of that particular backup, and it would be available to you so that you could actually go ahead and check the status of that particular backup, and it gives you a confirmation that if the backup is a successful and it's a bootable backup, so that in case you have a disaster, you would be able to go ahead and have the data completely recovered without having any data loss. So with that being said, we have come to the end of the presentation. So if you would like to know more about it, we also have a question and answer panel available. So you could go ahead and drop in your questions where we could go ahead and answer you. And we also have this product available for 30-day trial. So basically, you could go ahead and download the evaluation copy. And I would suggest everyone to go ahead and evaluate the product to make sure that it is completely suitable for your environment. And once you are completely done with your evaluation, then you could very well make a decision whether you would like to go ahead and start using Vembu for all your backups in future. And the last thing we're going to talk about is pricing. When it comes to pricing, you would only be charged if you have a virtualized environment. So basically, we offer disk image backups for physical servers and workstations and laptops absolutely free of cost. And if you have a VMware enabled environment, like if you have an ESXi server which is running with 2 sockets or 4 sockets, in that case you would be charged $240 per annum per socket, and it's going to remain the same for Hyper-V also. And additional to that, if you enable offsite backup and if you have the data backing up to our cloud, then the cloud storage cost would be 10 cents per GB per month.